What's going on, Bryon?
Man, I was just hanging out doing cool stuff, man.
Dude, I'm excited to talk to you. It's
Yeah.
funny how we met. We're both on the Rock Harbor security team, and then we just clicked, and I was like, I got to hear this dude's story.
Yeah.
So,
You got me pumped up to want to shoot some deer, definitely.
heck yeah, we need more hunters in this world.
Yeah, I got a bunch of hunting rifles, so, now I just got to step it up. It's just the gutting part. It's tough.
Yeah,
It's tough. Anything with a heartbeat,
yeah. The guts never got me, but when I have to deal with my kids and then they start bleeding, that gets me. Or when childbirth and then I see blood, I'm like, oh, I'm feeling woozy. So
Yeah, that's kind of like my wife. My wife can see all blood and all that stuff, and then she sees a cat that got hit by a car, and it's over.
Yeah.
You
you get that little switch in your brain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool, dude. Let's just start from the beginning. Where are you from, man?
Well, I was born in Tacoma, and I lived Washington, obviously, and lived most of my life in Puyallup there, and then kind of went back and forth from the East Coast to the West Coast. Did that a couple times actually. Yeah, and then landed back in Washington, and then long story short, went to jail, got married. 18 years later, now here I am here in Idaho.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack in there.
Yeah, there's a ton, man. There's a lot of dashes, a lot of those chat GPT dashes.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. So let's just get into it. You sound like you had a pretty interesting childhood. Let's kick that off.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. Grew up the earliest memories. Mom was on dope, drugs. I never really got into what she did. I just knew the results from it, and that turned into just a crazy up and down life. She essentially kidnapped us, drove us all the way to Virginia, and it was pretty bad because she exposed me to a lot of stuff regarding being in the same room with her when she's having sex with dudes, and just a lot of stuff that at 6 and 7 you shouldn't really kind of be dealing with. But through all that and growing up in the crack house and all that, that was tough. Moved back. Didn't even move back to Washington. Actually, we were going to go visit my little brother, who my mom kidnapped. Essentially, went to go visit him. Turns out she dropped us off for good, and essentially was like, if you can't take care of him, then you should send him to the orphanage. You know what I mean? And so my stepdad at the time wasn't having that. But that was a crazy thing in itself, because my stepdad got married in 1977. My younger brother was born in 1987 with my mom. So, infidelity, all that stuff going on. And so obviously moving into that house, as a surprise, my stepmom was not she despised us. Because we, represented something that, she, had to relive, but things went okay, she ended up kicking me out when I was 18 because, let me reiterate, I got kicked out of high school for making counterfeit money, and I was taking it to the student store and spending it.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it was major.
How'd you do that?
Dude, it was the stupidest thing ever, but it worked. I literally had a nice copy machine and then just copied two sides literally of a dollar bill and glued them together and then put them all together, crumpled them up, put them in the dryer with some pants, got them roughed up and then spent them. And then
just single dollar bills?
Yeah. Because, we're talking about...
Was it like kids running the stores at school and stuff?
Exactly. Right. ASB students or, whatever. So that was... It was cool, but it was a pivotal moment in my life because then that was the last straw for my step-parents, and they're like, you're out. You got to get out of here.
So you were living only with step-parents at that point? No actual parents?
No. Yeah, no, they were actually my guardians, Okay. It took a couple years, because I moved with them in 3rd grade, and then, I got kicked out in 10th grade.
So when you were really young, you were getting exposed to drugs at like 6 or 7 then? Like, what was that? Oh, yeah. So you lived in like a trap house then? Or?
Yeah, that was exactly what it was. It was tough because, like I was mentioning on that thing I filled out, I was always advanced in school. I was always advanced. So like when I was in 2nd grade in Virginia, I had to go to the 6th grade class. And, so that was tough getting bullied because, you're smart. Then I had to take care of my little sister. And the terrible thing is like shielding her from the abuse, trying to shield her from the drugs. While I'm 7, she's 5. It's like so. It was a lot of. I learned a lot of life skills, like a lot of wisdom that I shouldn't have. But God be the glory. He gave me the strength to be able to hold it all, and now I'm able to give people some advice. But yeah, so when I still remember my mom, like I was in the back of like a 1990 Mustang waving bye to her, like I could still see it in my head waving bye to her, and I had no clue that she was abandoning me at that time. I thought I was just going to go see my little brother, and so just abuse everywhere, emotional, physical abuse because I, became the whipping boy, you know what I mean, and that became tough for me, just going through all that, and then yeah, moved back. Um, to Washington D.C. with my real mom because I got kicked out because of counterfeit money, and I stayed there for a
This
couple
is after
years.
high school?
This was during high school, 10th
Okay.
grade. Yeah,
Okay.
I went
Okay.
to 5 different high schools during my 4 year tenure school there. But it was at that point she wanted to be my friend. She wanted to make up for some lost time, I think, and that really kind of she said as long as you go to school and get decent grades, you can smoke and drink. And I had never smoked and I had never drank ever in my life. So the first time that I ever did drugs or alcohol, was with my mom.
And your mom's just encouraging it as long as you're getting good grades?
She wasn't encouraging it like, "Hey, let's drink," but she's like, "Hey, we're smoking. You want to smoke?" I'm like, "I'm 15. Yeah, I'm trying to smoke." So it was a very looking back at it, it was a very like I'm surprised I made it out alive. Like when I was going to Dunbar High School in DC, like you had metal detectors to go into school in 2000, 2001 when I was going there. And it was a very scary time what I was doing because now places like that are extremely dangerous and, it's tough. So again, by the grace of God, I made it out,
You feel like your
alive.
mom was more of a friend then at that point than more of a parent?
That's what she wanted to be
Yeah.
because, it's like, what do you do when you're in a circumstance where you really topple over somebody's life? You want to get back in it, so you're going to do whatever it's going to take. And so going that friend route really is kind of the route I think she took for a reason. And, you know, she might end up watching this podcast, but she still tries to do some of that stuff today. And it's stuff that she's trying, but there's a lot of pain, God says forgive, so I forgive. But forgetting is the part that's like I'm never going to be in that circumstance again, and it was tough, especially being a father. I ended up having 3 kids by the time I was 20 years old, you know what I'm
Oh
saying?
yeah.
So it was, and I feel like you can only put out what's put in you. So you can imagine how good of a father I was, you know what I'm saying? Because
Right.
all I saw as father was, oh, cheat on your wife, beat the kid, all that stuff. And so that just didn't lead to a productive fatherhood. So that, and all that stuff. So, but landed in jail, thank God for that because that straightened me up. And then, yeah, got married after that.
Did you ever talk to your mom about what her childhood was like? If she's just passing down things that she knew, like you said, you didn't know how to parent your kids because you didn't know. But I feel like a lot of times hurt people, and
Oh,
they don't.
100%.
It's just passed down generationally,
Yeah.
and that's what a big thing I'm about is just we need to break these generational curses because I was abused, and I'm pretty sure my stepmom was abused, and so I'm pretty sure it just keeps getting handed
Yeah,
down.
I know.
So
It's so that's part of the issue with a lot of my family is a lot of my family are pathological liars, and it's like you never really feel like you can get the truth, when you ask. And so that's kind of the point that I was at is I just, I think a few years ago after I found out who my dad was and he had died a decade prior to me knowing who he was, that kind of that honestly pissed me off because it's like you terrible woman. Like you went around and had kids with 4 different people's, 4 different dads, you know what I'm saying? You had every man you ever, were in a relationship with, they were married, you know what I mean? And so those were some of the harder generational curses to break, you know what I mean? And then it took 10 years into my marriage to finally realize like, hey, there's certain things in your life that are, you're more attracted to or you're more, inquisitive about because of things in your past. And so I let my mom, I didn't let her have it, but I wrote down, this was before ChatGPT. I sent her a text, and I told her everything. I was like, hey, I remember when you were having sex with this guy in this bed, and the next day I asked you about it, whatever. And so that really like helped get some stress off me, but still, it's like dealing with my dad. I know who he was now, and it was tough because that whole situation got flipped upside down. You would think once you find out who your real dad is, that okay, now I'm gonna go talk to the family. Now I got a whole new side. Like I get to kick it with the black side now. Not the fake black side, the adopted side, like the real side. And I ended up finding my brother through my real dad's wife's daughter. Me and him got a paternity test, and came back. We weren't related, and so I lost it on my mom. I was like, blankety blank. You're over here just humping the world. You don't even like, everybody knows their dad except for me. Like, what's going on? And then I ended up doing, what is it, 23andMe or something? It was one of those sites. And then I just contacted all the black side, when it's like, oh, you may have a relationship with this, you may have, and I got one lady to respond, which is my cousin. And she was like, yeah, no, your father is Charles, or essentially my grandpa's Charles Odell Von Lewis III. And I was like, okay, so wait a minute. So you're telling me that is my dad, but I just got a test with my brother. That's not his son, is what it boiled down to be. So at that point, I was like, you know what? I'm 30-something years old, and what would me outing this information do other than destroy the photos they have on the wall? It would destroy any background, any trust. It would ruin family gatherings, all for what? Just for me to have, feel like I have this quote unquote place, in another side. And so I just decided to leave it alone because what I wanted to, it would just cause more harm than good. And so I was like, I've been hurt most of my life. Why would I want to, produce anything that would cause that on somebody else? You know what I'm saying? Just so I can be like, oh, box checked. Now I know. You know what I mean?
That's big, man. That's a big mature move to make. I've seen a few people just so distraught and torn down by finding out that they weren't the dad years later and stuff, and they've loved these kids and everything like that. At the end of the day, I mean, there's a blood parent and then there's a father, right? And I mean, someone's gonna step up and
and granted, I had a stepfather and I had a stepmother when my real mother wasn't there and stuff like that, but it was in title only. They were not good leaders. They weren't, they didn't have any foundation in the church or in God. So it was just emotional and physical abuse there. You know what I mean? And what made it just the bow, just the icing on the cake is, I had to bury them both, within 6 months of each other. And, my stepmom had, conveniently forgotten all the bad stuff that happened. She had forgotten that we found a journal. Me and my sister found a journal that had, a lot of writings in it about us and how she despised us. And she forgot all that. But, I became kind of the glue for a lot of family. I was like grew up the whipping boy, but kind of then now I'm the center of everybody and kind of helping keep people together. And that was tough because you just got a facade. You're fronting the whole time. Everything that you're doing and saying, you're faking it, like truly. And then you got to sit there and, like they got a divorce. Stepmom, stepdad got a divorce, but they ended up still dying essentially in the same house because they moved back in together. He was divorced again. It was just like there was so many generational curses that had to be broken on. Like, I feel like generational curses have nothing to do with your bloodline. Because I feel like there could be generational curses that I grew up around this certain environment, whether they're my real family or not. Some of that stuff is going to get put on me because, you plant an apple seed, you get an apple tree. So whatever's in you, that's what grows. And so, it made it tough. And we can get to why it's even more tough, with the shootouts and all that stuff that happened. whatever, that made things a lot more difficult to process, you know.
Yeah.
So
When you were talking to your mom, did she remember anything, or was she pretty intoxicated with your childhood? She didn't remember like a lot of stuff that you were bringing
my
up to her.
biological mom,
Yeah, yeah. When you actually
yeah,
came and talked
no,
to her.
she, like, I do have to give her grace, because she has been extremely apologetic. You know, she's been trying really hard, and you know, it's been me that's kind of been pushing off that contact. Just, you know, I had my whole family blocked, like everybody except for my sister, for, you know, probably a good couple years, just because I'm like, nobody ever wants to call Bryon to see how Bryan's doing. People want to call Bryon to see if Bryon has some money to give him. You know, Bryon is the support guy, so let's just put all the stress on him. You know, since I'm the only one in my family doing really well. You know, so I just felt like I was just getting used by everybody, and you know, iron sharpens iron. And when they were around me, like nothing good was produced. Negative, you know, emotions and things like that, and that's all I was able to exert. You know, to people like that I'm supposed to give all my love to, like my wife and my son. You know, so you know, I had to put the brakes on that, just stop it, and then you know, reconnected and stuff like that. You know, reconnected with my cousin, and I love my cousin to death. You know, we are completely opposite people on the spectrum. You know, you obviously can see how I am. I'm from Washington. She's not, but we were really close, and that's when I started to really figure out that, you know, got to stop this political divide, because how many people are you cutting out of your life because they don't think like you know?
The
But
cousin that you met on 23andMe?
no, this is, yeah. So I got
Oh, different cousin.
yeah,
Okay.
my cousin on the white side, you
Okay.
know. So the ones that live down in Olympia. Um, but yeah, so reconnect with everybody, and yeah, my mom tries. She tries, but there's just barriers, roadblocks that I think, I don't know how long it's going to take to get them down to where I'm like truly like, okay, let me open up to you. It just feels, because I remember everything, you know, visually in my brain. Just, you know, my wife has heard it over, you know, the past almost 2 decades we've been married. And so there's just a lot of deep rooted stuff that I just feel like, you know, they say that shattered plate, glue it back together, but you can still see the cracks in it. That's kind of what I feel like my heart's like with it when it comes to family. It's like nobody ever wants anything from me, you know, except for, you know, what I can give them. It's never been a let's give Bryon some support, you know, you know, so that's, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, no, I feel you, man. Um, trying to Family's a hard one because you, especially when you start going through all these changes and you want to be more positive in your life and you recognize where like that negativity is not going to get you anywhere and you still love them as family, but then you go around them and it's so negative and you're like, I love you guys, but man, I can't do this. Like I want to be around you guys as much as possible, but I don't want to be around you as
well,
much as
so
possible.
I
You know?
mean, I learned very early on that family has nothing to do with your relationship, you know, sharing blood with them, you know, and that's been the biggest thing. I've always lived by the mantra, I'd rather have 100 pennies, or I'd rather have 4 quarters than 100 pennies kind of deal. And so that's what I've tried to emulate my life around. And so I got two brothers, two best friends, you know, that I'm not related to, that, you know, we sharpen each other. You know, we make sure that we're trying to help each other advance in life, advance relationally, you know, in their circumstances, and they're the only two people in my life that, like, you know, as far as friends goes, that have my best interest in mind when they call me. If I could call any of them right now and say, "Hey, man, I need you over here. Can you come over here to Idaho?" They would 100% do it if I needed it. But you know, the fact of our love is we wouldn't do something to put somebody we love in a you know, jeopardizing situation. And so, you know, if I ask them, they would come, but they know I wouldn't put them in a position, you know, that would jeopardize them, and vice versa.
Yeah, when you start having friends that are just withdrawals and not deposits,
Yeah,
it gets really taxing and your energy just goes down so freaking quick.
yeah,
And especially like when you start having that with family, you're like, how is my family doing this to me? Like that entitlement of like, we're
yeah,
family, you owe me, you owe us. It's like,
yeah.
man,
It's crazy. Yeah, everybody looks at, they forget about the middle part of your life and then beginning of your life. They look at the end of your life and they see that, like, they see where I'm at.
Yeah,
you
it
know,
must be nice,
yeah.
right?
But it's like, where were y'all at worrying
Yeah.
about me, the first 3 quarters of my life when I was struggling, like
Yeah.
suicide, contemplating suicide many times, within the last 5, 6 years. Cause, sometimes I feel like men are undervalued, because I feel like we're like Atlas. Like we hold the world on our shoulders and we can't wince in pain. We can't cry, can't pet puppies, things like that. And so that makes it hard when you don't have an outlet for that, like good friends, good, manly friends or godly friends, things like that. And so then you end up exploding in other areas because you're not able to, do what you want to do. You can't show emotion, especially when you go through something like I've gone through, like it's just tough. It's
Yeah.
just very tough.
So what happened once you got out of high school? You said you had a couple kids by 20 or 3 kids by
Yeah.
20. So
Yeah. I was not a great role model, let's just say. And
well, you
yeah,
didn't really have any role models to look up to
yeah,
learn
yeah,
from,
exactly.
really.
Yeah. No, you're dead on with that. Yeah, I was fresh out of DC, with a different mindset because
Did you graduate?
no, no, funny thing is I graduated. I was able to walk with 2 different high schools, Dunbar in DC and Puyallup in Washington, and I dropped out in May. That's because I'm prideful, and I was like, I would like if I stood on something, that was it.
And you were
Like,
so academically gifted then too. And
yeah,
then when did
yep.
that change?
You st-
Because you said like you were getting advanced in grades and everything,
yeah.
and then like did you start struggling once, like
No, I never struggled, man. I
just
was
didn't want
I
to
was
do?
finished with math for high school in 7th grade.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so I took calculus, pre-calculus, geometry, trigonometry. Like I've done all that, and I was in advanced civics classes, advanced English classes and things like that. But to me, it's like my pride. It's like I don't care about this piece of paper. I don't
Sure.
care. I went out and got my GED and missed it by didn't miss my. I only missed. It was like 2,400 out of 2,500 possible on my GED. So it was, and thanks to my mother-in-law, she's the one who helped me get that. So my mother-in-law kind of stepped in a spot in my life where if I didn't have somebody, I think I would have just dove deeper into the depths of hell. Absolutely.
Your current mother-in-law right now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Right on. So you didn't graduate high school, but you got your GED, and then what?
Then I just used the gifts that God gave me to just advance my own kingdom. I was given the gift of gab and persuasion and things like that, and I just use it to my advantage. And then then I ended up having 3 kids. I ended up being with my middle son Gavin. I was with his mom for about a year, and then it just fell apart just because I was in no shape, to be with anybody. And then we split up for 4 years, and I was just heavy into drinking, heavy into cocaine, just didn't care about life at all. I was on a fast track to hell, or was that song Highway to Hell?
Yeah, yeah.
I was 100% on that mission, and that like thank God I landed in jail. Ended up getting 3 DUIs, 2 of them in the same month. Had a warrant for some assaults, and just went to jail. And
3 DUIs in the same month, you said?
2 DUIs in the same month, but 3 over like 6 month period. Like I was like fell asleep at a stoplight with a fifth of Hennessy and a eighth of weed in my pocket. At a stoplight.
And this is in Washington?
Yep.
So they're not as hard on that kind of stuff as they are here in Idaho, or how does?
No, it's way more lax there.
Okay.
You can be a criminal there and not have a whole lot of books thrown at you. Like I should have been, locked up for 10 years for the stuff that I did, but thank God I was not,
Yeah.
But
So when you got 2 DUIs in 1 month, were you just going through the ringer in that month, or what was that just kind of like the way
I was
of life?
actually, what's funny is the second DUI that I got, March 4th, 2005, the second, DUI that I got within that 30 days, like I was, this is going to sound crazy. I was celebrating because I had graduated alcohol treatment to the next step. So I didn't have to go to, the outpatient as often. And so I went out, got completely wasted, and then ended up, getting a DUI.
Did you have to go to those classes as like as a court order kind of thing?
Yep. Did that whole thing. Yep.
Was that for your first DUI?
It was, well, so I got the first DUI, yeah, and then I started doing the classes and stuff, and then I got 2 more DUIs while in the outpatient treatment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was, so I was rocking and rolling, man. I'm surprised that I am alive.
When did you get introduced to cocaine? Was that earlier in like your 15s and stuff, or?
I think I was 19.
Okay, out of high school.
I had a good buddy at the time that he was actually from Germany, and he introduced me to that world, and it was like, man, I'm already smart, but this just makes me feel like I am 10 times smarter, and that was a huge struggle throughout my whole marriage, because I've been married for going on 19 years now, and so that was a huge part of my life, like up until recently, till right before we moved, to Idaho, and so that in itself was an anchor that had me held for 2 decades.
Yeah, I heard it's a tough one to kick.
Yeah, it wasn't tough to kick. I just didn't want to kick it.
Yeah.
Like, and that was the toughest part.
Were you just lying to yourself, saying like it was helping you with your jobs and making you feel better and smarter and stuff then, or
100%.
That kind of how you were like?
Yeah, I think that's what every addict does is they grab onto any positive experience that they have, in their own world of drug use, and then they magnify that, and then that becomes their whole identity and into why they continue to do it. It's like, well, if I stop, then I'm not going to be as cool. I'm not going to be as popular. I'm not going to be as smart. It's like an addict will take anything they can and magnify that, in the positive way to make their, you can do it right now. You can look up what are the positive effects of cocaine on Google, or what are the bad effects, and you're going to get answers for both,
Right.
So it's like, that's kind of how that world is for me, or was at least.
How old were you when you had your first kid?
19.
Okay. What was that like when you find out you're going to be a dad so early in life?
Man, I don't really think I even felt at that point, because I was just so inundated with drugs. I was emotional and I was happy about it and stuff like that. But then, when I step back, 10,000 foot view of it, I'm like, bro, you got 3 kids. Like, you got all this to say about your mom, and now look at who you are. You're your mom. You know what I mean? Like, so it's that generational thing is deep. Now in hindsight's 2020. Would I change things? No, but only because I'm thankful that, of the wisdom that I got going through those things. And now, the ability to be able to help anybody passing by, that's really, the thing that's important to me. I was listening to something on Instagram, and a guy said, you look at a plum tree doesn't eat plums. A plum tree drinks water. The plums are for the people passing by. You know what I mean? So a lot of times the struggles that you've personally gone through aren't, we selfishly think, why God, why am I going through this? And it's like, well, because there's evil in the world, 1, and then 2, what you're going through is going to be something that can help somebody else get out of a circumstance, because I feel it takes an alcoholic, ex-alcoholic to help an alcoholic. It takes an ex-addict to help an addict. It's hard to help somebody if you don't know what they're going through, because then empathy means nothing.
Yeah, 100%. It's a lot easier for someone to take advice from someone that's had alcohol addiction problems than a pastor that's never touched alcohol in his life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of the times the things that we think disqualify us from helping others is actually the very thing that makes you qualified to be able to help.
Oh, 100%. You look at the 12 disciples, and that was a pack of wild animals. There was nothing perfect about them, and so that's just the lens I try to look through now, is that, through all my imperfectness and all my mishaps and issues, God can use it, for me to help somebody else. And that's, like just serving in church, like, helps. Like, it just gives me such a different kind of high, when I'm doing things like that, as I'm sure helping somebody get through something. You're like, yeah, that's right. You know what I mean? Like, okay, now the weight's a little less now, you know what I mean? So that's, it's all perspective.
How old were you when you started to find faith?
I was actually in Lakewood, Washington when I want to say I was 5 or 6, and like what's crazy is what made me start believing in God or knowing something was out there is I was just walking in my neighborhood with some hard candy, and I actually swallowed it, and I started to choke, and there was nobody around. And so, like, I was trying to cry out, ended up banging on my chest and spitting out the little lemon candy. I've never had one of them little things, since thinking, yeah, no way. And I was like, I knew at that age, I couldn't put into words, but I knew that even though it wasn't tangible, I knew there was something out there that was bigger than me that could get me through things. You know what I mean? And so ended up going around the neighborhood, and there was some people talking about youth group and things like that. And I can still see it. It's in my brain to this day when they all had us standing in a line. There was music going on. It was all crazy. And they talked about, Jesus and getting saved. And I was like, bro, I knew there was something. So hand went up, And now after that, it was tough to cry out to God because I was living in hell, but through it all, after it's all said and done, you kind of can understand why, as long as you are using the gifts God gave you for the reason he gave them to you, then you start to understand how his mercy and grace and power is, truly over your life.
Did you ever go through anything where you started to question whether God had a plan for you? I know I had that when I was a kid going through all that abuse I went through. I lost faith probably from, I don't know, age 10 or 14, somewhere in there, till I just barely turned 30. Like,
I mean, it's like getting beat down so hard. Like, what? Like, really, God? Like, is this what my life is supposed to be? I'm supposed to be a whipping boy, kind of like, me and the wife and the son watched The Shack last night, and that was kind of
dude, that's a tearjerker every time.
I cried at the intro, bro. Like, It was like there was nothing even happening. And I was like, come on, guys. Like, seriously. So.
That's such a good movie.
But it's so real. It's so real in the fact that it's like that generational thing. You really have no idea as you live in the moment. You have no idea, like, what somebody, that's hurting you has gone through and what the people, if you just keep going down the line, you can go all the way to Adam, like the movie says. And it's been nothing but chaos, So it really helps put a lot of things in perspective for me, especially, that movie's a good one. Definitely a good one.
I remember when I was reading Job for the first time in the Bible, I was like, man, this guy was put through the ringer, and to have this guy's faith is just amazing.
Yeah, because Job was always tough for me because it's like I felt like God was sitting up there and Satan was sitting up there, and Satan's like, hey, God, I bet you I can get your mans to disown you, bro. And God's like, okay, go ahead, try.
Let's double down.
See. Yeah. And so I'm like, it's like that has always been like tough for me. It's like, was Job like your project? Like what's, but then you look at it and it's like, no, Jesus went through the same thing. Everybody goes through the same thing. It's just perspective, I feel that we all get put through the same amount of stuff, which is exactly what we can handle,
Yeah, I always compare it to, what is it, like life's like the gym, and God only puts enough weight on people that he knows can handle it.
Yeah.
So when you start getting things thrown at you, just know that God has a plan, and he knows that this is what it's going to make you stronger, or he's getting you ready for another chapter in your life that's coming up. But once you got that faith, you're like, okay, God.
Outside looking in, man, it's always easy to say it, but it's like, it almost feels like somebody like me that's so stubborn and prideful. It's like, I have to go through it. And then when it's over, I'm like, man, if I would have just, and then so then you try to emulate that to your kids and things like that. And they're like, nah, nope, I don't care. Nope, I don't want to hear none of it, And so it's like, they're going to get to the point in their life where they're like, man, if I just would have, you know what I mean? And it's like, okay, well, now it's your job, to do that and try to emulate that to your kids,
And like you were saying earlier, is you got to get it to have it be their idea.
Yeah.
Once
a
kid can realize that it's their idea, you could tell them the same exact thing all day long, and then they're like, you know what, I think I should change, and then you're like, okay, that's where you're gonna have to change.
Yeah, and that's where you got to check your pride. You know what I mean? Because like I've been seeing this for years. You know what I mean? And it's like just so.
So when was the first time you went to jail?
when I was 12.
Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah. I
juvie.
was, yeah, like 12 years old. No, I went to Puyallup City Jail because I stole. I don't know if you heard of the artist BG, but I stole. That was the first time I ever stole was his CD, Chopper City to the Ghetto. And yeah, put it in my pocket, not realizing that when I walk out the door, the Camelot music, rest in peace, you guys shut down. But um, yeah, things started beeping, and I wasn't really a devious kid, and so I was like, oh, I should just stay. And I'm like, so cops got called, and they took my little 12-year-old behind down to the jail. My step parents were on a vacation, and they left me at a friend's house, and so my friend's dad had to come pick me up. I still consider him a better father than I've ever seen in my life to this day. Great, great, great man. And yeah, he got down there. He's like, nah. He was like, just lock his little ass up. Just lock him up. No, he needs that, And I was like, just crushed. So yeah, 12 years old was the first time. And then,
How long were you in for that?
man, it was like 12 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't, it was a grown up jail. And I was,
Yeah.
so they were like, we're just going to let this guy go. So I never saw anything from that, but, it was still.
That stuck with you.
Yeah. Cause the stealing thing, the first time I ever stole was when I was in second grade, stole a pack of Rolos, and I grabbed it and I walked all the way to the back of the store, sat down and tried to figure out how to put it in my pocket, and the lady was looking the whole time. And then she was like, son, come here, son. What? And then I got abused crazily for that. It was rough because when you live in a house like that, when people are high, when people come down, that's when things get rough for them. And it's like, okay, cool. What can I beat on? Oh, this little kid looks nice. So that's kind of how it worked out.
Dang. What about your adult life then? What was that like? Did you go to jail for the DUIs or anything?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Went to jail for DUIs, assaults, theft. Got a couple felonies on my record still, and lost my gun rights. For thefts and assaults, and so it's just. I just did the same thing, just worse, throughout, all the way up until I think I was married for a couple years. Actually, yeah, I think I was married for 2 years and I ended up going to jail again. I got jumped at a bar by these 3 dudes, and they're military dudes. And I only know that because the court records. And I probably started the fight because I'm an instigator, sometimes. But I also ended the fight. And then one of my buddies at the time came out when all the guys were on the ground and kicked one of the guys in the face. And when the cops showed up, I got charged with all that, even though it was self-defense for me. I got charged with that. So I ended up having the guy got military, discharged from the military, and I had to pay roughly 25, 30 grand in restitution, for that. And so my wife had to sit with me through all that, like I was doing real estate at the time. And so we're dropping $10,000, at a time trying to pay this stuff off, but, they ended up going to court and there was so much grace at that point. The collection agency was like, I don't know why they showed me favor, but they canceled the last $10,000 of my debt, in court, so it was like things like that. I'm like, dude, God, you show up like on time, every time.
Who'd you have to pay the restitution to?
The person, because his all these bones, the orbital bone and cheekbone were all broken, and his eye started to bulge out. That was due to the kick, so that's kind of what caused that big amount of restitution, 12, 13 years ago.
You mentioned writing letters to, was it your wife in jail or?
Yeah, that was.
What was? Let's hear that.
So it was. I had a girlfriend at the time, but what's funny is, it's not what's funny, but what I said to her a couple years prior to that was, I don't care where I'm at or who I'm with. If you ever ask me to marry you, I'll marry you. You know what I'm saying? Through my doped up, all that stuff.
To your current wife, you said this to?
Yeah.
And how'd you meet her? How'd you meet your current wife before?
At the skating rink, at Tiffany skating rink, when I was 14 and she was, 13 and she was 12, something like that.
Oh, you guys have known each other since childhood.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Cool.
I dated all her little friends except for her. I always felt she put on too much makeup, but yeah. And now here we are,
That's
know?
funny.
The
very first girl I ever dated was my wife's friend.
That's,
And we've been together now for like 16 years.
yeah,
So
that makes
since
Thanksgiving
since,
difficult sometimes. Yeah, that's, but so yeah, we so I ended up I was at a house party and I was wanted for assault on this AMPM guy, one of the store owners. And so I was at this house party and I was just drinking. Got a knock on the door, and I was like, "Don't open the door." Lady opened the door. It was the cops, and I was like, "Yep, well, I'm going." So I just sat and drank as much as I could. Ended up in jail. My wife was like, "Go figure, you're in jail." And so the letters initially emulated exactly, and deservedly so how she felt. Like, but what my cellmates would tell me is that they were like, we know when you're on the phone with your wife or your baby mama versus your girlfriend because you always smile when you're on the phone, with your baby mom. And so I was like, really? And so we were writing letters back and forth, and what was crazy is I pay attention to all detail. And the first letter at the very end of it, it just had like signed with my son's name, Gavin. And then the next letter was signed Gavin and Kendra. I cry so easy, so I wouldn't doubt if I start crying. And then it was sincerely Gavin and Kendra. And then it was love Gavin. And then it was love Gavin and Kendra. And the last letter I got, it said love Miss Parsons, which is my last name. You know what I mean? So like that was crazy. She was like, God told me that we're supposed to get married, so let's get married. And I was like, I told you I would do it, so let's do it. So I got out of jail May 3rd, 2007. And then we got married 7707. Makes it easy to remember. And yeah, we've been going through it ever since. So it's been great. She's 100% my rock, especially when the only person in my life, that meant something was my mom. I had issues with women, like don't trust and stuff, because all women that were in my life screwed me over. And so she sat and, we almost got divorced a million times, and, what couple doesn't, I guess. So I'm just blessed that she stuck around and she kept pushing forward. Like she forced, unbeknownst to her, me to walk a more narrow path than I used to. And it was tough, but like, I feel like she's the reason that I got into the electrical industry, because when I got out of jail, I had two full-time jobs as a cook. And so, I would walk from one job to the next. I was working on the waterfront, Ruston Way, at the Ram, and I was working at Anthony's, something like that. So I just would walk, excuse me, and going to church one day. A guy at the church was like, "Hey, why don't you go down to the electrical union? It's in Kent. They're paying high dollars." And I was like, "Well, I don't know nothing." And they're like, "You don't have to." And so I got in, found out that I was highly mechanical. My mechanical reasoning skills were good with my hands, could figure things out. You needed to be good at math, for to do electrical work, which I was pretty good at, and yeah, never looked back, making the most money that I've ever made in my life. But if I wouldn't have been with my wife, been at church, talked to that guy, obviously God orchestrated it all. But if I wouldn't have been in that situation with her, I wouldn't, who knows? I wouldn't be in this chair right now. I promise you that, So it's like, I give God all the glory, but I give her all the credit, essentially, because, I feel like without her, like I would 100% be dead now. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So I almost died a few times while being married, So it's been a grind. It's been a grind. But the one thing that my stepmom told me a long time ago that stuck with me is if it doesn't take time to get it, it's not worth keeping, And so that's how I've looked at my life, So it's been good. It's been good.
How'd you almost die?
Which time?
Anyway, yeah.
So the first time I almost died, and this is embarrassing as heck, but who cares? I robbed somebody at gunpoint. Took a pound of weed from him, and I knew nothing about guns. Knew nothing about guns, and I cocked the gun and I put it in that guy's face, and I didn't realize that the trigger was like 2 pounds at that point. So one false move and I could have killed somebody. So I went to go put it back in my pants, shot my own self in my own ass, and almost blew my own nuts off. And it went through between my femoral artery and my femur. And they said you would either lost your leg or lost your life if it wouldn't have gone right through those. And so, was in the hospital and all that good stuff. And, that was like, it was embarrassing, but it was like, it was just par for the course, at that time, for my life. But again, God had a plan. And there's this preacher that I love on TV or on Instagram. I can't remember his name exactly, but he says sometimes God's plan for you is so great that he won't even let you mess it up. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think that was one of those times because it's like, yeah, there's no way that there's not a calling on my life, seeing all the hoops that I've jumped through, it's like I was running through life blindfold like a toddler head first, didn't care. And, God shielded me and protected me from everything. And the worst thing he protected me from was myself.
Dang, dude. That's crazy. A couple millimeters over and you could have lost your life.
With a 45 too. So
Whew.
Big boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a very terrible time. Certainly. What other time? Oh yeah. Second time I almost died. Fell down a waterfall. Me and my wife and son. And I got pictures on the phone. From that day. We were eating lunch at the top of a waterfall. And she was like, don't fall. Don't fall. And I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to act like I'm falling because she keeps saying don't fall. Like, I fell, down head first. Like there was the whole fall was like 75 or 80 feet.
Oh my gosh.
There was a little collection pool, like 15 feet down. All rocks. Fell head first. I was wearing some brand new Danners. I was not wearing swimming clothes. Let's put it that way. Fell in head first with a half a breath left in me. And what's wild is I didn't hit my head. I dislocated my knee, but didn't hit my head. And I don't know if you've ever experienced vertigo before, but vertigo is terrifying because you fall in and you don't know which way is up. So the way that you could be trying to escape could be to your detriment, And so I kept hearing, like I heard my wife scream 10, 12 feet down in the water. Like I heard her scream. And so then I looked, saw light, and man, I was stroking. I was like, like I had one last stroke before it was that, and made it up. Got, a couple people almost fell trying to get me out. So they called 911, East Pierce Sound and Rescue. Thank God for y'all. Came down there and rescued me, pulled me out of that. So it was like second time,
Jeez.
there was a ton more times, and there's also another time it's more recent, but in between those, it's like there was many times, like I ended up going to the hospital like 14 times because I had anxiety attacks, felt like I was dying, just from doing way too much cocaine, So it's like God is real. God is real because I'm alive to talk about it. The most recent time was was in July, right before we moved. My alcohol use and cocaine use had caught up to me, like in a severe fashion. I had severe stomach pains. And so my wife was like, you're just dramatic, hypochondriac. You always want to go to the hospital for something. But I was like, man, something is up. Went to the urgent care and they were like, they had to take my blood to a different hospital to spin it because I'm not sure if triglycerides and the correct levels or good levels is 100 and below. Mine was 57, 56, like 5,700. Yeah. And so they were like, your blood is like motor oil. And we have no clue how you've even survived. And so they did some tests on me and caused kidney failure. And so I ended up in the ICU, like hanging on for life, essentially, for 2 weeks. Landed in the ICU right before we were moving here, like months ago, 5 months ago. It's crazy.
Holy cow, man.
Yeah.
How was that ride home with your wife after the waterfall? And she told you, she's like, I told you so.
No, she didn't. But you know what's wild? My wife and my son, Gavin, they got this, I call it a malfunction in their brain. They just start laughing. And so they were up there, like I think their response is like once they're past the crying, then they can't stop laughing, and so they laughed at me, took pictures, down there with me, my dislocated knee, struggling, but all in all, man, it's like still the grace of God saved me.
I have that same thing, man. Oh man, whenever I'm in pain, I'm just laughing. I break bones. I'm laughing, dude. When I watching my kids get their first shots when they were kids, man, they'd be screaming, crying, and I'd be laughing, and my wife's just like trying to tell doctors he's got this weird thing.
Yeah,
he's not.
So you got a malfunction too.
Yeah,
Y'all weird.
What was the thing you were telling me about that your wife was driving you 40 miles each way to work or something?
Yeah, this when I was an electrician, and I ended up all those DUIs ended up catching up to me. So my license, I had to have an interlock in my car for 5 years. So you got to start your car. So that was fun when I was showing clients houses, you know what I'm saying? And they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, she's jealous. I got to give her a kiss before she'll let me, drive kind of thing. So I was able to play it off, but I ended up getting my license revoked. Like,
your realtor license?
No, my driver's license.
Oh, you drive, yeah, okay.
So she was literally taking me to work 40 miles north to Bellevue, dropping me off, driving home, driving back, picking me up at work, driving back. So it's like that's, meanwhile, she worked at a hospital, she worked there for 20 years and like she had a job. She was doing her thing, working, I think 410s or something like that at the time. And so it was a tough time. And we were living with her mom, so it's like, how demasculating is that? Your old lady got to drive you to work. You're living with her mom, it's like, that's embarrassing, but my pride didn't let me sit embarrassed. I just did it, and grinned and bared it. And it worked out. But again, that's just one of the other things that she's done, added to the list of helping me in my life, like without her, no clue.
You feel like all those hard times made your guys' marriage even stronger though? Going through all that together and
now, yeah, 100%. But initially it's like, God, if pain makes me strong, I should be a bodybuilder at this point. It's like going through it, you both have to be mature enough to recognize what's going on and then realize, okay, God's in this. So this is what makes us stronger. Now we have normal issues, cleaning up, peanut butter and jelly crumbs. Now that's the most annoying thing. So it took a lot to get there, counselors and, there's a lot of mishaps, the marriage talk with my marriage would be a whole nother podcast, be a whole nother time, like the amount of stuff that she had to put up with, with, my mom issues and this issue, that issue, still taking me to work, me being prideful, not being the best dad in the world. Like she sat through all that, wrote it out, and she's still here.
Yeah, I think that's hard for wives with husbands that have gone through trauma. I know my wife has had a hard time with it. Like, there's stuff I just wouldn't talk to her about. She's like, you should trust me and you could talk to me. And I'm like, I just don't want to talk. You know? And she's like, she had a hard time with it, like that I wouldn't want to talk to her. And then I would start, things from my childhood would come up and then I'd start taking it out on her and it's not her fault. And so I really feel.
Yeah. Leaving your drama at the door was so tough to do, cause it's like, I feel like you start getting a little resentful too. Like, even though like this woman's riding with you the whole time, it's like, I need to be mad at somebody. You're the closest thing to me. So, like, how can I, take this out on you kind of thing,
Yeah.
So that's,
That's all back to that generational thing, because that's what happened to us,
Yeah.
It's like they got to take it out on someone, and we're the only punching bag in the room, so take it out on
How do you
us.
put out love when nothing but hate was put in you?
Yeah. When do you think that was like a switching point in your mind? Like, man, I got to break this generational curse with my own kids.
Last Thursday. No. No, it was tough, because when I was in the hospital with pancreatitis and kidney failure, even up until just July, the doctor said you can't drink, you can't do cocaine. Obviously, you shouldn't have been doing it in the first place. You can't do that ever again, because the risk of you dying is extremely high, And so dealing with, my son, my son has addiction issues. It's like the generational curse is so crazy. Like, most of the people in my family, are on drugs for the most part. And it's like, I don't even know what the other side of my family was like, So it's like, when you see it in your son, it makes it tough, But the thing, the thing that makes it easier is now being out of it, now being completely sober, nothing to modify my brain except for these energy drinks. Now it's easier, and I think my son looks at me a little differently now, because he's going through his own struggles, and seeing, finally a man, finally a father able to help you, again, going back to that, addicts can help an addict, and it could be your own son. I think that's making it easier, but we still struggle daily, on addiction. I'm addicted to anything I do. So it's tough.
It's probably also why you're really good at business and what you do now, because once
Yeah.
you get like all in on something, then
Yeah.
you're going to be the best at it.
Oh yeah. That and pride, that's all the electrical licenses and certifications I got, right now. I went out and got them because somebody said I couldn't do it. That's the only reason why I did it.
That bet against me mentality.
Yeah, I'll prove you wrong. They were like, oh, we've never seen a master electrician, an RCDD, and a nice set certified electrician anywhere. And so now I got my RCDD, master electrician's license, and nice set, which is fire alarm stuff. But, that it started off as pride, but now I'm just proud of my accomplishments that God helped me, achieve.
Oh yeah, man. That's awesome. I love that. You mentioned to me about a shootout. What was that about?
Oh, man.
And I don't know where that is on this timeline, but
Man, so this was in 2020, the height of COVID. So just for a little background, my stepmom always had a pill problem. So she would always take mini thins, like back in the day when they had ephedrine in them. Excuse me. So she always had a pill problem. She ended up hurting herself. I think she hurt her back or something, and they gave her pain pills for it. Well, she overdosed on those, went into shock, ended up in the hospital in a coma. So that happened. The other side, I was in real estate. I ended up selling a good buddy of mine a house. He wanted to move out and buy another house. So I sold him another house. And then he was like, I want to rent out my house. And he was like, I want to rent it to your little brother. And I was like, bro, that's a bad idea. That's my brother. I love him. That's a bad idea. He rented it out anyways. So a year later, which was 2020, he got evicted out of there. And so my stepfather at the time had purchased a bunch of stuff for my nephew. And so my stepdad was like, Bryon, can you go to that house and go get the stuff that, of Junior's, like the bed and all this stuff. And I just got a brand new truck. And so I was like, yep, cool. So went there and, the house turned into a dope house. There was literally an engine cut in half. There was, a chopped up Dodge in the garage, and they had all just left it. And so we're walking all in the house, and I find an ounce of meth. And it's like, hey, I do cocaine, but this stuff is trash. Like I was very judgmental about meth, even though I was, high myself. So we flushed it down the toilet. And about 30 minutes later, this Honda pulls up, and the guy's like, "Hey, I'm here to get my mattress." And I was like, "Bro, you're in a Honda. Where are you putting the mattress?" I was like, "We flushed the meth down the toilet." So I was like, "If that's what you came for, it's gone." And so he was mad. He was super mad.
What's the street value of an ounce of meth at
Back
that point?
then,
I don't know, but yeah,
I don't
imagine
know.
that's a good
But
chunk.
if he wasn't selling it, he was smoking it. So
Oh, okay.
it was more valuable than money at that point to
Okay,
him.
yeah, yeah.
So then my buddy Zach, he actually he went down for like 5 years for stabbing somebody. So it's like, shows up to his house, he's mad, and then this guy shows up to pick up his drugs, and then he wants to go in the house, and the house is trashed. It is like 20, 30, 40 grand in repairs needed. So he's mad, and this guy comes in talking crap, to my buddy, and I'm like, "Bro, don't." It's like, "You ruined his house, you better shut up." Well, he didn't want to shut up. So he got stomped out right there in that room. And then I pulled my buddy off, and I was like, "Hey man, okay, cool. Let's keep this going. Like, let him get his stuff." And then he was like, "Hey, can I invite my brother over so that he can help me get some of my stuff out of here?" And Zach, my buddy, was like, "Hell no." And I was like, "Bro, look, the more stuff that gets taken out of here, the less stuff you and your mom got to deal with." And so he's like, "Cool." So we're sitting out. It's a split level house. There's like a huge, a bluff that's like 2 feet up with grass leading to the front steps, and we were down below on the garage driveway. We're standing in a circle, us friends. Excuse me. And so this greasy dude shows up. Greasy, he's wearing a whole swishy outfit, long greasy hair ponytail. He walks right through the middle of our circle, and just like doesn't stop, just walks through. And me, I was not in the best spot mentally there. Like, my anger got the best of me. And I was like, "Oh, forget that, bro." I was like, "Nah, that dude, now I'm stepping in. He got to go." So I put hands on him and chased him out of the house. Well, I was a little less in shape then and more fat. And so I couldn't run as far. So I stopped, came back, and I was like, "Hey, bro, he's going to come back because he has to get his car. So when he comes back, I'm going to stand up here on this bluff, and I'm just going to make sure that if anything happens, he's looking at me when he does it." You know what I mean? So he gets in the car, of course. I have my Glock 19X on me. Like, that's my favorite gun, still is. It's in my safe now. And he got in his car, backed out real fast, like slammed on the brakes, window went down, and I was like, "Yep, here we go." Poked his little gun out the window. I let him get a couple shots out, and he missed, obviously. And so I lit him up, shot him 5 times, all in the driver's side of his chest. And, at that point, like, I had my felonies. And so I had gone through all the process to get my rights reinstated. So I got my rights reinstated. I had my CPL, still have it. And I was building guns, and I was shooting frequently. So I was, I've always been very aware of my situation and surroundings. And so having that, training, that I was able to have an addiction to guns, then I just became good at it. And so I busted him, and then I called the cops. They were like, "Yep, just put your guns in your vehicle, lock your vehicle."
What do you say to the cops when you call them?
I said, "Hey, I just got shot at. I shot him back. I hit him. I heard him scream. This is the address." And then I call my wife and say, "Hey, babe, I just shot somebody here. I'm at Zach's house. Come through." So she comes through, and what's wild is she parks right where the dude parked, like right exactly where. So in a shootout or any crazy scene, typically the police they're going to want to separate you because they want to make sure that your story's not influencing other stories, blah, 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 but we all have the same story because we didn't lie. I sat in the back of the cop car. So I wasn't under arrest. So I had my phone still, and I'm texting my wife, and I see the cops. They're looking all around because they're trying to find shell casings. And I'm like, it was probably a revolver because I couldn't find none. But they flash the lights around, and they go to my wife's back seat, and then they go down with the light, and then they go right back to the light to the back seat, and I called my wife. I was like, "Babe, what is in the back seat?" And she was like, "All your guns." I was like, "Oh Lord!" So I watched this group of detective and police pull out all, like, I was doing the polymer 80, Glocks, you know, the 80% AR-15 lowers, like, so I was milling and drilling my own guns, and so they had them, all my guns laid out right there, and essentially they were like, "Why'd you bring all these?" And they're all legal, and she's like, "My husband was in trouble," you know, and so then
Did you tell her to grab them, or
no, I did not. Nope.
That's a good lady.
My son had my Glock 43 or something, or in his pocket, and I was like, "Kevin, what is in your pocket?" I was like, "Y'all are tripping. Like, this is cool, but y'all are tripping." You know what I mean? And so she had the cops put the guns back in the car. You know what I'm saying? Like, you took them out, put them back. They took me down to the station. Um, and they I'm not a fan of this police department because they impounded my truck because the guns were in the truck. That they told me to put the guns in the truck, and so they impounded my truck. My stepmom's in a coma, and I'm the power of attorney, mind you, this whole time. And so then go down to the station. I'm drawing on their whiteboard, this is where the bluff was. This is where I was at. You'll find 5 shells here. This is the driveway. This is the house. This is where the car was. This is the route that he took. And this is where I shot him. And I made sure that I was aware of my surroundings. I made sure, because it was in a neighborhood, that there was anything, like, I had to be on target. If I didn't hit it, I would hit a house. So I made sure once I heard him scream, then I stopped shooting. And so, they were like, "You sound like you know your guns really well." I was like, "Yeah, I practice all the time." And they're like, "You're a lot better than he is." And I was like, "Well, why do you say that?" And they're like, "Well, because they can't pull the bullets out right now. He's in the emergency room." So he ended up passing. And I had the cops taking me back up to the house. They ended up releasing my truck around midnight. But let me backtrack a little bit. I got a phone call. So because my stepmom was in the at the hospital in the ICU, I would get morning updates. Every morning at 11 o'clock, I would get a phone call from the hospital during COVID, and they would let me know the status. She couldn't talk anymore. She was in a coma for so long that she couldn't talk, and so that made it tough. But they called me at 10 o'clock at night, and I was literally with the detectives. And so I was like, "I got to take this. My stepmom's in the hospital. I got to take this call." And they told me, they were like, "Hey, if you get a phone call from us, you need to answer it, because, your mom's been on a breathing tube, took it off, put it back, and now she's off again, So, like, they were like, if we call, answer." So I got a call at 7 o'clock the next morning, and they were like, "You need to get to the hospital." And so I get to the hospital, like I said, during COVID. And the reason why I mention that is because it was a pain in the butt to deal with the hospitals. You had to be gowned down and masked up and only one at a time, blah, 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 all that stupid stuff. And so I get in the room, and then four people come in. I'm like, "Shit, here we go." Like, I already know, like, it don't take 4 of y'all to tell me, and one's wearing, preacher clothes. So obviously you have some bad news for me. And so, yeah, she's laying there, and they're like, "We have done everything we can for her." They were like, if we intubate her again with the breathing tube, she's never going to come out of the coma again. And so they were like, I was like, "So what? You just want to make her comfortable? Like, dose her up with morphine until she stops breathing?" And they were like, "Yeah." So I was like, "Well, I'm calling my wife, and my family's coming. Like, I don't give a crap about your COVID stuff." So they allowed it. They allowed, my wife and my son to come in there. Held her hand, and I could see in the hallway. I knew which room she was, and I knew which block on the TV was hers that showed her, breathing, her heart rate, and all that stuff. And I just watched it tank, and so I knew like, it was just that leading up to that moment was like, death is coming. Death is coming. You know what I mean? So, held her hand and, till she passed away. And she passed away. And that was like my first, I've seen people get shot. I've seen people die, but it's different. It's like, what's crazy is you don't think about your childhood being terrible. You know what I mean? You're like, damn, like she just died while I'm holding her hand. It's like, so that was a very tough time. The police came back and said self-defense. So I didn't get charged with nothing. And, right at that time was a troubling time with my son because he was doing MDMA and I didn't know it. And I found out. And so then he ended up like running away, or he got kicked out because I was like, you either got to go to treatment or you got to leave. And so he left. Unbeknownst to me at the time, my mother-in-law picked him up against our wishes and let him live with her for a year. And that kind of caused some issues for us for a year. And so dealing with her, burying her, dealing with the house, selling the house, converting the house into a rental for my sister, because my sister was still kind of, dependent on needing some help. So helped her out with that, paid her rent for like 6 months or 7 months, dealt with all that stuff. My stepdad was still in the house. So, I bought him a car and kept the car in my name because I was like, if this happens again, I want to at least be able to do something about it. And he was a very bad eater. He had leukemia, had heart problems, had a stent, always ate fried foods, and he ended up passing 4 months later. And so then he was a firefighter. And what's crazy is that this is when I realized, like, men look at the outward appearance. I think it's 1 Samuel 16:7. Men judge the outward appearance. God judges the heart. And I could be wrong. Sorry, Lord, if I am. But he was loved by thousands of people. Like, it was so crazy, like how much he was loved by all these people. And then they had no idea what was going on at home, with us, with me, the whole infidelity, beatings and emotional abuse, stuff like that. People had no idea. And so I set up that ceremony, ended up renting out this bingo hall, this veterans bingo hall. And I set it up. I got a caterer that's a firefighter, worked with him. So did barbecues. I got the fire department to bring his truck that he used to drive. They extended the ladder all the way up. Had a couple hundred people there. And, they did the color guard or whatnot. They came in with flags and they came in with bagpipes. Like, it was a whole thing, and it's like the whole time I'm sitting there mad. I'm mad as hell because these people didn't want me as a kid. Now I'm taking care of them, to the death. And I got to grin and bear it. I got to smile and cry. Now, granted, I cried because I was sad, but it's like nobody understood the full background of what's going on. All they saw, and that's why I say they judge the outward appearance. What it looked like, it looked good, but deep down it wasn't. And so I bore a lot of resentment and hatred because I'm like, I had to deal with his life insurance, which ended up going to his ex-wife, and she wouldn't help pay for anything, because she had her own deal going on. And so it's like, both y'all died. Okay. Like, and now I'm having to take care of everything. It's like, again, I don't deserve any of this. Like why, God? Like why? And that made it, that was probably one of the roughest years, because shootout, stepmom dead, stepdad dead, son is addicted, and that tarnished relationship with the mother-in-law, the one that helped me get, my driver's license, help keep me in the church, keep me volunteering in church, like that woman, so it's like the whole thing together is just like, God has to be using this for something. God has to be using this for something, because there was no way on God's green earth that I would go through all of this stuff up until even July of this year and there not be a reason for it. There not be a purpose, a bigger purpose for it, and that's kind of what's helped me get past these emotions and these roadblocks. It's helped me open up. I never thought I'd be sober in my life. I was like, I'll quit everything, but I'll never stop drinking, and God's a funny God in that way, to where, he's like, okay, well, let's see. And now I don't drink. Now I don't smoke. Now I don't sniff. I don't do nothing. I just enjoy my life, and I'm extremely happy about it. I'm happy about everything, moving here to Idaho, going to get my car washed and see Rock Harbor Church, and then, end up start going to the church. I was doing lead security at a big church where I was at in Tacoma for a decade. Never talked to, I think I talked to the pastor twice, in a decade. The first day I showed up at Rock Harbor, Pastor Keith came up to me like he was wearing his cowboy jersey and came right up to me and just started talking to me. And I'm like, am I like the thumb? Did I just stick out? Like, why? Like, and I had multiple conversations with him. I had more conversations with my pastor now in a month than I had in a decade with my other one. I was like, man, I got to serve. I need to serve. I need to serve. I need to use my big self to be on security team here. And so I jumped on, and then, God willing, here we are. My wife wanted me to do a podcast for so long, to the point of arguments. Like, you need to help people. You went through all this, God did it so you can do that, So I was like, nah, I ain't, nope, not doing it. And then see you at church, and you're talking about podcasts. I'm like, oh, bruh, like, God, let me go, please, but it's like, nah, he ain't gonna do that. He's gonna stay around you in spite of yourself.
Do you think that you went through all that for a reason to help others then? Is that what you think, like, God put you through all that for?
Oh, I think so. I think that's why God allowed it, 100%. Because you never know. Like, just through random passing by people, you have no idea what they're going through. The thing that you say to them may help or hurt them. And so when you see somebody that you just see at a store randomly, and then you have a quick conversation with them, and then they get a little enamored with you, and then they start talking, and then you start letting them know, hey, yeah, I've been through that. It's like the power behind that is so great, and it's like hard to deny. Like, there's no way I could deny that what I went through was not for a reason, not for a purpose bigger than myself.
Yeah, man. You said that addiction was a big part of your life, and were you living like a double life? Like, did your wife not know for a little while that you were doing it, or?
Yeah, she ended up finding out because, I'm a control freak, so I had cameras everywhere. And she seen one of my close buddies in the garage with me, and she seen him hand me something, and she saw me put it in my pocket, and then she pulled up, because I was great at hiding it, did it for a long time before she knew, well over a decade.
She watched it on the camera happen?
Yeah, she saw it, and so she came up to me, and she reached right in my pocket and grabbed it out, and she's like, what's this? And I was like, thinking in my head, because I'm quick on my feet, I was going to say like, oh, this is caffeine. This is just what I take to help me, whatever. But I was like, nah, it's like, it's blow. That's what it is. Like, I've been doing drugs for a long time. And so that was devastating. It was like extremely devastating. But what was even more devastating is after I, quit, never quit, just kept doing it, and her finding out again. And like, that's what was like, really? Like, but she didn't have, any hate or malice, in her mind. It was more of like disappointment. And that's what kind of triggered, me, like, okay, you've been disappointed by everybody your whole life, and now you're the disappointment, so it's like, you got to change it. You got to change it. So I didn't change it. I kept doing cocaine still after that. And she knew, and she ended up knowing about it. She didn't condone it, but it's like, wasn't really hurting her, I guess. And so she just kind of allowed it, I guess. And that, then I ended up in the hospital with alcohol and cocaine-induced pancreatitis. So, at the very end, God wasn't okay with it and stopped it.
How was your guys' relationship after that? Once you found out that you were doing it and you still were continuing to do it?
I think our relationship has gotten stronger, every day. But those were tough times, just because of the disappointment, And so we had, it's like you got drug issues. Now your kids got drug issues. Your wife doesn't have drug issues, and she's sitting having to watch all this unfold, and try to keep it together herself, And she had her own things she was going through, and so it was tough. But again, glory be to God for this, because we're stronger than we've ever been. But we've done countless counselor sessions and church, volunteering, trying to get closer to God. And so, I can say today that this is the strongest that we've ever been. And I think it's because of what we went through. That's not to encourage people to hide things from their, spouses or things like that, but because we went through that and came out on the other end, like now we're stuck with each other now. We're going to be together forever, and that it's really reassuring, because she's helped restore my faith in women, because she's been steadfast and sturdy this whole time. She's been my rock forever. So it's like, now it's like everything I do, I want to make her happy. I want to please God, and I want to please my wife, and that's kind of what I live by.
Did you feel any sense of relief when you found out?
No, I didn't feel any relief. It's honestly, when you've been doing substances for such a long time, I feel like it deadens some of your emotions. Like, so you're just like, screw it. What else is what else is gonna happen? So it's like kind of that. I don't know if it's like a narcissistic mentality that you get, but I just knew that things had to change. I knew that I'd be done at some point. It was just something. It was like my last pacifier that I had. It was the last thing I had to hold on to that helped me forget about all the pain that I've been through. And so it's like kind of like in the shack where God makes him face his father, the pain, makes him bury his daughter, things like that. And so I think, facing the pain and getting rid of some of that pride that wouldn't allow me to talk to a counselor, I think, slowly started breaking down my pride. And now I have no problem apologizing for something I've done wrong, admitting, that I'm wrong. And hey, you may not have been offended, but my heart was in the wrong place. So let me apologize. Let me do something. Let me show you that I'm serious. And that's done extremely well in our family. And so our son just moved back in with us. He was in California down there in doing treatment down there. And I couldn't see him down there. Like, I knew it was nothing but pain and sorrow down there. Like, if you're trying to get off of drugs, you probably want to get out of a place that's full of them, and so moved him back up. And, we've been doing really well. He just got a job pretty much within the week he was here, first week. And, it's been good. I can truly say this is the greatest time in my life right now.
That's awesome, man. What was that day like that you got hospitalized? What happened?
Man, that's talk about surprise. That I wasn't surprised, but I wasn't surprised that they said I should have been dead, because I'm like, God's got my back, and I think that helped fuel some of my lack of care, is that God got my back and he's going to keep me alive. It's like, I'm just going to do whatever I want.
How many times you had already cheated death?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It's like, you know what I'm saying? I'm great. There's something I got to do, and so, yeah, that was more shocking to me, that I was able to give up those substances that I relied on, so heavily for most of my adult life.
What happened that day, though? Did you just get into like a, did you have to get the ambulance called, or what happened?
Oh, no. I I drove myself to the hospital because we got to a point where I was like, if I started to feel like I was getting sick, I'll go to the hospital. So I ended up going to the hospital so many
those
times.
were those anxiety attacks you were having.
Yeah, exactly. They were induced, by the overuse of cocaine, and so then I was like, "Yep, I'm not feeling well, babe. I'm gonna go to urgent care." She's like, "Yep, all right, cool." Probably thinking that I'll see you in a couple hours. You'll come back. They'll give you a dose of Ativan, and you'll be just fine. But they were like, "Nah." And then what's crazy is that I was in the hospital for a few hours in urgent care, and then they um, had the paramedics come pick me up, and then they took me to uh, Allenmore Hospital, like right away, right in the ICU, and that is like the most terrifying experience because that is the one time that you realize you don't have any control. You don't have any control or any say in what happens here. And so it's like that time when I was most affected by potentially dying, that is what really bothered me. Like it was demasculating, like I had to have a grown man essentially change my diaper on the bed because I couldn't move. Grown man put a catheter in, like it was like the most embarrassing, humbling thing that I've ever been through, because it's like, you know, I'll die before another man touches anything on me. And here you are, being touched because of some stupid choices you made. And then my pride got the best of me. They moved me from the ICU to the PACU. And I was like, I'm feeling better and I don't like my doctors. So I left the hospital against the doctor's wishes. And you'll never guess where I ended up 30 hours later in the ICU because like my pride couldn't keep me out, like I was truly sick. So I ended up having to go back to the urgent care. And then they drove me down to another hospital in Olympia, and I was there for another week. And then, got out. I had to postpone the move a couple times. And I was like, I was so done with everything, so done with Washington State. I was like, this state is nothing but pain to me, And if you look at it now, it's underwater. It's flooding everywhere. It's crazy. Thank God we got out of there. And it's like, thank God we're here now. Thank God we're here. But yeah, it was a struggle.
What were some of the breakthroughs you had that week you were in the hospital, just alone with your thoughts?
So, remember when I was talking about blocking my whole family, blocking everybody? My wife was like, you're down in Olympia. That's where most of your family's at. She's like, why don't you take this time to, do what God is telling you to do, which is forgive your family. And I was like, hell no. I ain't forgiving nobody for nothing. Ended up forgiving him, unblocked him, had him come down to the hospital. My sister came to the hospital, my mom came to the hospital, and my cousin came to the hospital, and it felt good. It was like, wow, okay, this isn't on my chest anymore. Like, okay, now I can kind of move past this. Then my wife's like, see, told you you'd feel better, And
sucks when they're right, huh?
It's crazy. What's even more crazy is that there was two groups of people that I had to forgive before I moved, and I didn't want to forgive any of them. The first was my family, like I mentioned. The second was my next door neighbor. I almost beat the brakes off my next door neighbor so many times. He called the cops on me multiple times, all because I saw him on camera, like talking at my wife a certain way because his dog kept coming in our yard and crapping in our yard. And so it turned into like, you messing with my wife? Like, because in my mind, she's been my rock this whole time. And now you're messing with her? It's like, bro, I'll kill you, bro. I'll straight up kill you. And what is so funny is all my stuff was packed up. I was trying to get my car on the car dolly, and it's all-wheel drive, so I had to do it on the little flatbed kind of deal. And there were neighbors coming, and they were all moving all around and all this stuff. And I had to move the truck and drive back around, and I ended up parking right in front of his house. And he was in his truck. Now, one thing that I'm not disrespectful to the point where, like, I'm going to block the entrance to your home. Like, that's not me. And I despise this moment, but I'm glad God did it. I got out of my, out of my head, got out of the truck, knocked on his window, and said, "Hey, man, I'm trying to strap my car up. Is it cool if I sit here?" And he's like, "Yeah, go ahead." And I'm like, "Man, I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry that I was the way I was. Like, I treated you bad, disrespected you, and all that stuff. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, I was like, you never have to worry because we're moving out of state. So, so I think it's, my wife got her wishes. She was like, you need to forgive the neighbor before we go. And I was like, what did Eminem say? I wouldn't pee on you if you were on fire to put you out. Like, that's how much hatred I have for that dude. But in the end, it's like God prevailed. He was like, you're going to forgive, because you can't, like, if I wouldn't have forgave that dude, I would have lived the rest of my life with that, and it would have just been another weight to hold me down, and, thank God that it was like literally on my way out. And I was so shocked. Like, really, God, you're pretty funny. Like, I was on my way out and you're like, hold up, you got something to do first, So it was good. It still felt good, and I was able to come here to Idaho, clean bill of health, clean slate, and, found a good church right away.
What had brought you to Idaho out of everywhere?
No idea. Wanted to get out of Washington. And we never even been to Idaho. We just asked. She has a couple family members that live here, the ones that are cool. And they were like, they named off some cities, and Star was one of them. And so we just looked up rental houses, put all the deposit down, did all the stuff we had to do. And literally when we pulled up to the house, that was the first time we ever saw it. So it was literally one of them darts on a map kind of things, no clue.
And the job that you have, you can just work remotely then?
Yeah. God's blessed me. Like, I never would imagine, like, when my wife's running me back and forth to different, and I'm an electrician, I'm carrying conduits up stairways and all this stuff. I never would have imagined that now I'm working remote. I'm helping, design low voltage infrastructure for hospitals, acute, non-acute facilities, cancer clinics, like doing it all from home, polo up top, boxers down low kind of thing. Like, it is like the greatest. And that's really what I strive for, because the same person that said, you'll never get those certifications. He's like, if you do, you can work from wherever you want. And it didn't really click until now I'm working from home, and I can make great money. I'm working with a religious-based organization, Catholic organization. So I'm able to talk about God, versus when I was working at Amazon, it's like, you better not mention God because we don't believe in that here. And so it's like, it's just crazy when you sit back and you look at everything from start to finish, all the way from birth to when I met you in church. Like, if you can't see how God's aligned everything, like, that's like, I'd have to be foolish to not see. Like, I couldn't plan this. I can try to have as much control as I want, but I can't plan how my life will go, and letting God has put me here.
Was there anybody in your life that believed in you and like showed, I mean, I know you said your wife, but was there anybody else in your life that like had seen potential in you when you didn't see it in yourself?
My two homies, my two best friends, and that's it. No family member, nobody that I cared, that I shared blood with did. It was just grinding and grit. It was meeting these two people. Like, one of my best friends was my old apprentice. That's how we got close. I was a foreman electrician. He was an apprentice. And my other buddy, I sold him houses, showed him houses for like a year and a half, finally bought a house. And it's funny, he kept on calling me afterwards, and my wife was like, just hang out with him. I was like, babe, I don't need no friends. I don't want any friends. And I mentioned the 4 quarters thing earlier. I got 2 50-cent pieces now. That's really what I got. And it's like, me and my one buddy, Rogers, we had this undercover contest where he would mention how good he was doing, and then I'd be like, oh, well, let me get my crap together, and then so I have a better story for him, and then he would do the same. And it got to a point where that friendly competition you know, molded us into, brothers that truly care about each other and will do anything for each other, because we want to see nothing but shine. So it was him, you know, initially, and then my buddy Ruben after that like kept filling me up with, you got potential. You're just like my buddy Rogers says, I'm the smartest person he knows still to this day. And I'm like, bro, I'm a dumb dude at times, so that type of motivation, didn't come from family, but I guess it kind of is coming from family now.
How do you get around those circles? Say somebody wants to break their environment of being around like these small-minded people. How do you get around those type of people that'll call you up instead of, calling you out? Or just making you feel comfortable, I guess, more like it.
Yeah, it's what I've lived by as philosophies is that if you're the smartest person in your circle, you need a new circle. And my pastor back in Tacoma was big on, you show me the 5 closest people in your life and I'll show you your future. And it didn't really make sense until I started getting into these, and these were God ordained relationships. These aren't relationships that I was out searching for because I felt that I had everything I needed. I didn't need nobody, and then meet these 2 people. And yeah, my life's been nothing but blessed having these folks and having, my wife in my life. Like I couldn't ask for a better, 3 people.
Now that you've conquered your addiction, how do you think that that's helping you with your son and helping him with his issues?
I think he can look at me now and truly believe what I say, because it's hard to try and tell somebody who's addicted to something like, hey, just stop. It's easy to just stop while you're addicted yourself. It's like it's oxymoronic. It's foolish. Like, what do you mean? You can't stop, so how am I supposed to stop?
Hypocritical kind of?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Hypocritical 100%. And I think, he told me he's seen a lot of changes in me, and I think that he takes me serious. When I talk to him, he looks at me in the eyes and listens, and he's very hopeful now, just because now when I say, hey, you can do it, you can stop, now he can believe me, because the one guy in his life has done that, and I think that's part of the deal. Addicts can help other addicts, like once you stop doing drugs, you don't stop being an addict, you just stop yourself from doing certain things. And so it's still have that same mentality, but now I just use that energy to pour it into my son. And, he's highly appreciative of it. I, not probably not a fan of those, the stern talks like, no, you can't do this, you got to do this, but it's like, hey, we got a lot of catching up to do because, we were both doped up and didn't really want a relationship. And, now we do. And so now, it's like we're starting back, but now I'm not taking any time for granted, like I truly enjoy this. I didn't think I could ever love anything other than myself. And it turns out, my house is like, I love everything in it, my wife and son and my dog.
If there's any other addicts listening to this and they want to quit, but they're just too afraid of maybe not knowing where to start, or if they've tried before and they failed, like what advice would you give them to be more successful on this try rather than the other ones? Like, what do you think that they could do to just start?
I think the biggest thing for me is having a foundation in God, one, because when you try to do things with your own strength and your own mind and your own willpower, you will fail. Anything that man has his hand in, always fails. And so the biggest thing is have faith in yourself. Push forward through all the problems. Realize that there are other people out there that have gone through what you've gone through. Don't be too prideful, to the point where you can't even ask for help. Like, reach out. Don't give up. Even if you got a million day ones of not doing whatever, that's fine. Just keep pushing through it because you will make it. And I'm living proof, that you can make it. Just stay faithful, stay open, get rid of some of that pride, and realize that you're called for something. If they're in a circumstance to where they're doped up and can't get out of it, realizing that they can help somebody get out of it is even bigger motivation to stop themselves, because like I said, the high that you get from helping somebody now that I'm sober is way better than any high that I've ever felt in my life.
Yeah, truly. That's awesome, man. Have you been able to, besides your son, have you been able to already help other people in their own journeys?
I try, the day, passing by random people here and there. I always give any words of wisdom, joke, being funny is one of my ice breaking things that I can do with people. And so really this day today is probably, it's not probably, is the first time that I've ever shared like something like my two homies, my two brothers. They don't know my whole past. They don't know any of this stuff, and so I'm excited for them to hear it. And I think this honestly, Matt, is my first time using God's gift to try and reach other people, and so I thank you for it, providing this opportunity. Like, God is good,
Yeah, man. I seen a dude in a big old cowboy hat, 6'9" or whatever you are, and I was like,
Yeah.
I gotta go talk to this dude.
Yeah, no, the cowboy, man, I love it, man. I love the cowboy hat. My wife thinks it's sexy, so I think it's sexy. And Pastor Keith told me it looks good too. So I'm like, I'm so I just need to get some boots. If they make them in 15, I'm gonna get some.
Heck yeah, dude. Yeah, but Keith is a cool dude. I love listening to him talk, man. It's just I really study his speech patterns, and I even asked him one day. We went to that intentional parenting conference, and he was there, and I was like, how'd you become such a good talker? And he's like, I'm just a funny guy, and I just bring that into my sermons. I don't want it to be all doom and gloom. And
what's crazy, man, is he's so authentic. I've had multiple conversations with him, and like the way that he's just like when you watch him move. Like I told him, I was like, when I watch you move through this church, like you're talking to everybody. When you're talking to people, you're looking them in the face and you're listening. You're listening to hear somebody's heart. You're not listening to respond. Like we've had some bad past, me and my wife, with a certain church that the pastor was a funny guy on stage and he would make fun of people. And I really feel like he abused his platform. And so that really kind of scarred me, from church, and then getting taken advantage of in my other church. And, they knew I was going through drug issues, but they still wanted me to serve anyways, instead of trying to reach out to me and help, so when Pastor Keith started to joke and stuff, started to have some old flashbacks of like, oh, this might be like your old church where they get up and they use that pulpit, and talk down to people, but like this church helped me regain my faith, because I hadn't been to church in 2 years. I totally stopped going because I was like, nope, like the only people that were supposed to love me, like my mom, they gave me up. The church didn't care about me, so I hadn't gone to church in years at that point. And so first day in church, the pastor comes up and talks to you. You're like, he even took my phone number down. He ain't called me yet, but, he even took it down. He's like, we need to get some coffee sometime. I'm like, wow, like I'm just a regular dude, never having that interaction with pastor before, but it's been nothing but a godsend ever since. Like volunteering in church has been fun, and yeah, I love it. I feel like if you call yourself a man and you call a church your church home, it's your duty as a man to serve, like, period, and that's just my, conviction. But, that's why I had to get right in and start serving. You never know when you got to take somebody down in the name of the Lord. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man. I love that. Yeah, I just started this year too on the security team, and I thought that was something that I needed to. I didn't want to just be a casual Christian. I wanted to help out too.
Didn't you say that was the day that we met was the first time you'd been there?
I missed
served
like
in
the
a little
last
bit?
3 months. Yeah, because it was like the one time I was in Utah hunting. The exact weekend it was like a guided hunt we did with my dad, and then the next month I was in Disneyland with my kids, and then next month I was hunting again, and then back in November was the first time.
Day you show up.
Yeah.
Like it's, man, God has some. I'm gonna be chatting with him when I get up there. I'm like, man, how do you do this? Like,
Yeah, you make plans and God laughs.
Yeah, I'm just me. You know what I'm saying? Like you have your own divine experiences with God, and your wife does too. My wife does too, and that's just like our tight little circle. But like it's like everybody in the world has a God story. Whether they want to admit it or not. And it's just crazy how our God, like, he loves me enough. He loves you enough. He's not going to give up, on you. And it's been nothing but a glorious journey. This has been, the best, I think, emotionally. We've been like, I'm actually getting 8-9 hours of sleep versus 5. I woke up to a notification saying I got a good score on my sleep, now. So it's like everything is going, I think, the way it's supposed to. I'm in that spot where I'm like, this feels good now.
Right on, man. What's the message you hope that your story leaves with the world?
I really want everybody to know that, honestly, they're loved by God. You've heard my story. You've heard everything that I've been through, and I'm still here. And there's probably 1,000 more stories that I haven't told. And those stories are between me and God. And I think if you can just realize that open up to God, He's there for you, whether He's tangible or not. Fake it till you make it. Just try as hard as you can to be the best version of yourself that you can be, and pass that on. Because like I said, you can't put out love if you don't get love. So be the one that gives love so that somebody else can put it out. Be that change. The legacy starts with you always. If you've had nothing but generational pain, the legacy has to start somewhere. Don't save it for the next one. Don't put it on your kids. Change now. Change for them now.
The show's called Rain Brings Growth. What does Rain Brings Growth mean to you?
I mean, being from Washington, rain means a whole lot, because that's all I've ever seen. But to me, rain brings growth means you don't appreciate the sunshine without the rain, and so rain is necessary, without rain, trees would die, things would die, without, that water. And so I feel like you have to go through struggles to be the best version of yourself. Like, you have to. If you're fully equipped with everything you need, you don't need God, and so you get put through some struggles, and I feel like that's truly what rain brings growth means, is that God can take the worst parts of your life, feed the better part of you, and now you become a better person that can share your stories with others.
Dude, I heard this thing that was like the three most dangerous words a man could say is "I got this." It's like when you don't leave any room and you think you can handle it yourself and you don't need God in your life. Like,
100%. I even just said this to my son yesterday. I said there were two men. One said he could do it. One said he couldn't. And they're both right. And so it's like, your words are extremely important, Speak life, It says in the Bible, your tongue is like the rudder on the boat, It's very small, but it can determine the direction your life goes, So watch your mouth, Be nice and fake it till you make it, Just fake it, That's why I do a lot. Just fake it. You'll get there.
Yeah. Taking action even when you're scared and afraid. Have no fear because God has a plan.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough to see it,
Yeah.
in the growing phase, but you'll get through it. You'll get through it.
That's the hardest part, is just believing it at the moment.
Yeah.
But once you can take a step back and you realize that you've gone through all this stuff and you made it through that and God had a plan for you, then it's like, okay.
Yeah, that's that breath of fresh air when you're like, okay, now I see. Now you become that child that understands why, you're like, now it makes sense. It becomes easier to not be so prideful when you put all your faith in God and actually trust Him, and, start praying,
Oh, for sure.
having a conversation. Like, that's all He wants,
Have that relationship.
Yeah. I couldn't, like, how much love me and my two best friends got. Like, and God loves us way more than that. Couldn't even fathom it. So it's, in that perspective, it's like, well, now I don't want to be a disappointment. Now I want to use the gifts that I got, that God gave me, for the reason He did, and shine through with that.
So I wanted to touch on your Instagram before we get out of here, because I think it's funny. What's your tag? The light skin.
Light skin conservative.
Yeah.
yeah. Obviously, I'm conservative, so I'm more of an escapee. One of the cows that they call us here, California, Oregon, Washington. Love guns, and obviously, love Trump. I love politics, and I more so, I love freedom and the things that come along with the values I hold. Being conservative. It hasn't always been easy, because I'm a black dude from extremely liberal state. And a lot of times people look at you, because we share the same melanin, they think that we share the same values. And that's more often than not wrong, and that's kind of, how I live my life. I thought of the story of if everybody had a sign on their forehead that said what they believed, how many people would you avoid, And so even though I have these deeply rooted conservative values, I took a little test online and it was like, you're crazy, but it's like, that's what I believe. But how many relationships have I missed out on because of what I believe? And so, that's been a point. Treat everybody the same, even if it's somebody that you can tell you don't agree with, be cool with them. Ask them how they doing. You never know what you say and how it could affect their lives. In my Saturday men's group, one of the gentlemen brought up, it's not about conservative and liberals. It's about saved and unsaved. That's what matters.
I agree with that. Yeah. Yeah. I think too many people put their identity in like politics.
Yeah.
And, then they can't even see anything other than blue or red or, whatever. So yeah, I think that, and there's good things to learn from everybody, whether they believe in the same politics as you. Like you can learn good things from them, you can learn bad things from them, but there's always some kind of nugget, and there's a little piece of God in everyone. You just gotta look for it.
You can learn something from everybody, good or bad. You can learn how to do something or how not to do something. And I've said for a long time, my story, I can either use it as a stepping stone or a crutch. I can either explain my behavior as to why I'm like this or why I'm not like this, and that's up to me how to decide.
Yeah, what's that, like the parable about there's like two twins and they both grew up in the same household. They both had abusive and alcoholic parents, and then one turns out to be really successful and the other one's just a failure. And then they interview them both, and the one kid says, well, I grew up in an abusive household and alcoholic parents. I had no other choice than to be successful. And the other kid says the exact same thing, and he's like, but I had no choice but to be a failure.
Yeah.
So it's like you can play the victim card, you can play the victor card. Either way, it's the way you look at it. Either the cup is half full or it's half empty, but you can use this as that pain that you went through to fuel you, or you can make it an anchor and hold you back.
Yeah, exactly. It's up to you to make that determination.
That's the difference between a hero and a villain. A hero's been hurt by the world, doesn't want anybody else to be hurt, and a villain's been hurt by the world and wants to hurt everybody in return.
It's all perspective.
So where's a good spot for people to follow you at, man?
They can follow me on Instagram. That's all. Twitter as well. At Big Nap, BIGGNAPP.
Didn't you say you do twitching or streaming or something?
I streamed for a while, but that was like I was drinking a ton and I was doing a ton of cocaine and I was the funny guy. And so, I got a bunch of people to follow me, but I actually deleted my Twitch, deleted my Discord just because, I used to wear multiple gold chains, got rid of those just because that stuff reminds me of a life that I used to live. And so now, I want to change it up. I still go by Big Nap. A lot of my close friends still call me Nap. So that's, something I'll probably live with forever. But that's the only part of the old me that's left.
Right on. What do you want to see going forward? What's your goals going forward?
Well, one of my goals going forward is that you take me hunting one of these days. So that's a goal of mine. But in all seriousness is to keep growing in God. Like now I'm anxious to see, or excited to see like what God can do now. Like now that I'm in it, now that I'm excited to be a part of it, I'm really looking forward to the plans God has and the people that can be touched. My wife wants me to start a podcast and do all this stuff, and I was like, but now I'm kind of open to it.
Yeah, dude, I think you have a great story. I'll talk to you off camera about some other opportunities, but I think you could help out a lot of people.
Yeah. But
dude, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it, and I can't wait to clip this up and send it out. Who knows who's going to see it and be affected, and you already helped out.
Affected or offended, I could care less. I want to see good things happen.
Well, either way, there's going to be truth spilled, and it's going to affect lives, and I think that's going to be awesome, man.
Yep.
You got God at the center of your life, and good things are coming.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks, man.
Thanks, bro.